What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to week 6 of the NFL season. As usual, I'm going to go through all these teams. You guys might notice a different screen now. I'm on teamrankings.com. I just think just looking at the matchups is one thing, but being able to see, the spreads and the point totals gives you an idea of what kind of game script these teams might be in, as well as, obviously the higher total, like the better it is for fantasy. So we're going to go over a lot of these, some low totals, some high totals, some totals I think that can be over and under. But let me just make this clear. This is not for betting. I'm not going to be here. I'm not going to tell you which side of the spread I like or if I'm going to take the over or under. This is just to make it easier for me to go through these matchups. So, that being said, let's get straight into this. So, also, I don't know if you guys noticed, we have my first live audience here. I don't even know if you can see her, but that's my dog. Her name's Nana. She's a pit bull. She's about two years old almost. She's very sweet. But it's about 10 o'clock at night. I usually record this in the morning around 11. But because of the whole schedule change with COVID and everything, here I am, Friday night, 10 o'clock. So hopefully nothing crazy happens leading up to the game. There is one game that I believe is in danger. I don't remember if it was someone from Atlanta. I believe it was someone from Carolina. Someone from this game tested positive in Carolina. I think someone in the Jets, or I don't even remember what team it is at this point. It seems like every team, but I know Denver and New England is the one that's um, the most likely to have some problems here. So I believe the Patriots starting center tested positive for coronavirus, and they're waiting the results of one more player. So we'll see. Both teams want to play. They haven't made any announcements about this game being changed, so we'll see how that goes. And I'm just gonna do my normal thing. I'm gonna go over each matchup here. And now that we have the spreads and the totals here, which by the way, teamrankings.com for that. But yeah, so let's just jump straight into this first matchup here. So no Thursday game this week, so I don't have to skip any games. That's good. Although I didn't really skip the old ones. It's just this allows me to start this later. I could do this Friday, Saturday, as opposed to trying to do this on Wednesday. So hopefully we'll have a much better time here. Let's go over these games. We got the Cleveland Browns heading to Pittsburgh. Um, so we got the total at around 51. That's not bad. And if you guys aren't familiar with the total and everything, so the total is like obviously the combined total between these two teams. They're expecting it to be around 51 points. Like in math terms, it'd be like 26 points each. Like 26, 25 and a half technically points each. Not a bad scoring game. Anything over 50 is actually pretty good. And I'm on a similar page to where I think this is going to be a higher scoring game than most think. Out of Cleveland, I think this is a game where you can start guys like Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr. Pittsburgh defense, they're famed and claimed to be one of the best defenses in the NFL, but they just gave up like 30 plus points to the Eagles. And they've been good about turnovers, they've been good about sacks, they've been good in that department. But as terms of allowing points, allowing yards and stuff like that, they're still, pretty light. So definitely startable game for Odell Beckham Jr., startable game for Jarvis Landry. Kareem Hunt, you're definitely going to fire him up while Chubb is not in the game. Baker, I'm not too invested in. I mean, there was a game a week or two ago where the Browns scored, I think it was like 51 points, and Baker still only had like 20. So his upside's not really that high. So I'm not too interested in Baker. I just try to slow down when I'm doing these two because I start rambling. I run out of breath because I'm out of shape. So, yeah, Kareem Hunt, I like. Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry, startable game. Austin Hooper, he's been pretty consistent over these last 2 weeks. I think he scored 10 plus in the last 2 weeks. Last week he was right in the border. So Austin Hooper might be a decent option in this game. I'm just not too sold on him. So if you're desperate, then Hooper could be okay. But just no. For the Steelers, Big Ben, I really like in this matchup. I think he has the potential to score 3 or 4 touchdowns in this game. James Conner, he's still that starting running back. He's going to be an every week guy. He's kind of flying under the radar right now, but he's not doing bad at all. Wide receiver wise, Chase Claypool coming off that huge almost 5 touchdown if he didn't get called back game. I think he's definitely startable, especially because Deontay Johnson is out with a back injury this week. So, Claypool, he's someone I'm looking to start this week. If you ended up getting him on waivers, this is a good opportunity for you to throw him in the game. I'm not expecting 4 touchdowns again, and I wouldn't expect that from him for the rest. It's not possible, but that's just a lot to expect from a guy like him. I still think he could have a decent game though. It's a good matchup. Yeah. So, like I said, potentially high scoring game with Deontay Johnson out. Juju Smith, can you start him this week? I would classify him as a flex play, a low wide receiver 2 / flex play. I don't really feel too comfortable about the targets he's been getting, but this is like the perfect type of matchup for him to get involved. A division rivalry. Deontay Johnson being out for the entirety of the game, so I think this could be a decent matchup for Juju. So I'm okay with starting him, but my expectations are not very high considering what he's done this season. Eric Ebron, also a desperate option here. Like I said, I think Big Ben's gonna have a big game. Is a pretty decent total, so definitely good with throwing Ebron if you're really desperate. In the Steelers' defense, I'm okay with. Because, like I said, they'll get the sacks. They could get a couple turnovers. And even if the Browns put up points, the Steelers' defense can still be okay. So I'm fine with keeping them in. But let's get into this matchup here. So we got the Bengals going against Indianapolis. The Colts during the week had several COVID tests come out positive. And then an hour or two later it came out they're all false positive. So there's no worry about this game here. Totals 46. That's about like 23 points each. I'm expecting it to be a little lower than that. I just don't. The Colts aren't really putting up that much points, and they've been a part of a lot of low scoring games. So that being said, it makes it a lot less attractive for fantasy owners. Joe Burrow, I'm not starting him this week. The Colts, I think, are the best defense against the pass, allowing under 200 passing yards per game through 5 weeks. So, staying away from Joe Burrow in this game. Joe Mixon, one of my guys for this year. Last week, he had 8 targets, which tied the Bengals, all the Bengals receivers last week. And in a terrible matchup against the Ravens, he got 15 points in PPR. So, if you're in a PPR league, he's a running back 1. He's an every week start. I mean, the fact that he got 8 targets last week is absolutely huge. He's going to have better matchups down the line. This is not a great matchup at all, but he can still rack up those catches and give you a good week. So Joe Mixon, if you have him, he's staying in my lineup. Wide receiver wise, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, definitely a better matchup from last week. I think they're both these guys are startable. T. Higgins, a little bit of a sleeper on DraftKings. I think he's like 4,600, and he's gotten at least 10 points every single game since becoming the starter. Since that 1 week where he scored 2 touchdowns, he's been very, very consistent. So I'm okay with plugging in T. Higgins. I know I said I didn't really like this matchup in terms of touchdowns, but if you're in a PPR, these guys can still rack up catches and enough yards to get you through the week. So definitely okay with Boyd. Definitely okay with T. Higgins, but it goes with saying their ceilings are capped. AJ Green, you just can't start him anymore. He's not getting targeted. He's not playing well. Just don't bother starting him. Tight end wise, Drew Sample hasn't done enough. He's not been consistent. He's not even on my radar. The Colts here. So with a -7 spread, if you're unfamiliar with the spreads, what it basically means is, uh, if the Colts, if you subtract 7 points from the Colts' final score, they would still beat the Bengals, which is what you're betting on. Like if the Bengals had +7 added to their score, they would beat the Colts. So it's not really too complicated when you say it out loud, but basically it means I think the Colts are going to win by like 7 points or so. Um, in a positive game script, this is going to be a defense where the Colts will, they have a, I mean, the Bengals have a really bad run defense. They're missing a lot of those interior rushers, and that could cause a lot of these rushing attempts, to funnel through the middle of the field. I saw someone on Twitter talking about how it's kind of just a perfect storm for a guy like Jonathan Taylor. So I really like Jonathan Taylor this game. I'm going to be plugging him in to 100, not 100, to a ton of DFS lineups. I didn't even mention Phillip Rivers because he just has been awful and he's not worth mentioning. And other than Jonathan Taylor, I mean, T.Y. Hilton had a decent game last week, surprisingly. I think he had like 12 points, 6 catches for like 64 yards or something. He's nothing but a desperate start. I just don't trust Phillip Rivers. I don't trust this offense. It just has not been good. As far as the tight ends, there's actually someone I am a little interested in this week, and that's Trey Burton, who last week, I believe he had a pretty decent target share. And this was his first week off IR. So let me just pull this up here. As always, not 100% prepared. So Trey Burton had an 18% target share last week. T.Y. Hilton had a 30% target share. But point being, Burton's being targeted. He seems to be the lead tight end in this offense. More importantly, Mo Alley Cox is going to be out this game with an injury, and Jack Doyle just hasn't done anything. So if you're desperate for a tight end, I think I think Trey Burton could be your guy this week. And he's likely available in your league. So if you're really hurting a tight end, then Trey Burton would be my guy for you. Colts defense also like them here too. Okay, one of the higher over-unders we have here is at 54. We got Atlanta going into Minnesota. For Atlanta, we got Julio Jones is going to be back this game, right? So, big news for Matt Ryan. I think this is going to be a bounce-back game for the Falcons. I don't know if they'll necessarily win outright, but point being, Matt Ryan's had a slow first couple of games, and not first couple. He had a very strong start to the year, but the last 3 weeks he's kind of been slipping a little bit. They did fire Dan Quinn, and we saw what happened the first week. The Texans fired Bill O'Brien. After that week, Deshaun Watson had a big game. Brandon Cooks had that big game last week. Will Fuller did fine. David Johnson didn't have a bad game. So this could be a big blow-up spot for Atlanta. I mean, it's a great matchup. The Minnesota defense, as much as they held the Seahawks offense to nothing in that first half, they fell apart very easily. And I don't know. I'm just expecting a bounce-back game from Matt Ryan. Todd Gurley's been hot. If he's on your team, you probably don't have too many other options, so I'm definitely starting him. Julio Jones carries no injury designation going into this week. He claims to not be an injury risk, as opposed to being a game-time decision, as opposed to being questionable. He is just healthy, so they say. And with that being said, he's going to be in my lineup if I have him. And that helps Matt Ryan a bunch, too. And it also helps Calvin Ridley, who's also healthy this week. Outside of Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley, who you're obviously starting, I don't feel comfortable. I just really don't feel comfortable with Russell Gage. I don't know if it's him or if Olamide Zacchaeus has gained a role on this team, or I don't know the whole situation there, so I'm just going to stay away from that. As far as tight ends, I know Hayden Hurst, at least on ESPN, he has a pretty high projection this week. But he's been completely hit or miss, and he's been mostly miss. So he had one big game. But you know what? If Matt Ryan's going to have a big game, then just like I was mentioning up here with Big Ben, if your quarterback's having a good game, that means the receivers are also having a good game. So I'm not against starting Hayden Hurst if you're in a tight spot. You don't really have many other options. There aren't that many other options. I would start him over Trey Burton just because of the the known upside of him being the number one tight end in Atlanta in a Dirk Cutter offense. So there's that. And so on to Minnesota here. Kirk Cousins against Atlanta. Atlanta has just been the worst defense in the NFL. Do I want to start Kirk Cousins? Probably not. He could be an interesting DFS play, but he just hasn't been known to be a big scorer. As far as running backs, Alexander Madison, he is a must start this week. If you have him on your team, there is no excuse to put him on your bench, and that should be pretty obvious, but still worth saying. So, Alexander Madison, if you have him, you're starting him this week. No questions asked. Especially with, as I should mention, Dalvin Cook is out officially for this week. So that's that. Adam Thielen, he's going to be a top 3, top 5 wide receiver, as he's been for a good chunk of this season. Justin Jefferson, last week was expecting the big game. It was the trap game of the week. It didn't happen. Everything lined up for Jefferson to have himself a game, and it didn't come true. So, obviously this is a great matchup. This is a high scoring game as we see here. So I think Justin Jefferson is worth flex consideration, worth a wide receiver 2 consideration. Just know he has big game potential. And a lot of people probably giving up on him after last week. I don't blame them. The Vikings didn't really throw the ball that much. They tried to keep the early lead by running it with Dalvin Cook and eventually with Madison. And because of that, they gave up a lot of drives and ended up not throwing the ball at all. So I would expect Minnesota to throw the ball a little more this week. And for that reason, I think Justin Jefferson, if I have him, he'll be in my lineups. Tight ends, Kyle Rudolph, not interested. Irv Smith had a decent week last week for the first time. I think that was more of just a situational thing than anything. It may not necessarily be a sign of things to come, but just keep an eye on it. Keep Irv Smith on your radar. He's a second-year tight end, and if he has another good game, maybe we should consider picking him up. And if he follows that up with another good game, then maybe we should end up. Sorry, I just got a call. But if he has multiple good games in a row, then he could start becoming a thing. So that's that. I'm getting completely distracted. I apologize for that. It's tough when you don't live by yourself. You get all these calls and everything. So, next game here, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars hosting the Detroit Lions. So, as for the Jaguars, Gardner Minshew, I think he's been doing pretty well this season. This is a pretty high total. I'm very surprised by this total. I guess 2 bad defenses, but I mean, to think that Gardner Minshew and the Jacksonville Jaguars combined with Detroit are going to put up more than Minnesota and Atlanta just sounds kind of nuts. So, yeah, that's pretty shocking to me. I didn't realize it was that high. For that reason, I mean, James Robinson, he's a weekly starter. Like him. Gardner Minshew, like him. Wide receivers for Jacksonville. If DJ Chark is playing, which as of right now he is questionable, and he's having a baby, by the way. He's having a little baby Chark, so congrats to him. Like he's going to watch this or anything. So DJ Chark, if he's playing, I'm going to start him. Laviska Shenault, who's really fun to say, by the way. He's been upgraded to active. He's a good start as well. He's been very, very consistent. He's quietly been putting up 10 plus points each week this year. So I like Laviska. I like DJ Chark. Not interested in anyone else. But with a high point total, I think both Visca and Chark could eat in this game. As far as Detroit, you got Matt Stafford, who I think is a good start. Now we have an issue with these running backs here. So a lot of people are on the Adrian Peterson train, and it's not a very big train, but this is like the matchup of all matchups for running backs. We saw what Joe Mixon did against Jacksonville, it's just a weekly trend of running backs just crapping all over Jacksonville. So will it be Adrian Peterson? Or, my opinion, it'll be DeAndre Swift. And here's why. So Detroit is coming off their bye week. A lot of times over the years, we've noticed teams coming out of a bye week with a different game plan. So Adrian Peterson was not part of the original week one game plan. He just kind of came in towards the very tail end of the offseason. At the same time, DeAndre Swift has been dealing with an injury. Now he is 2 weeks out. He is fully healthy, and he's getting more of a feel for this offense. He's been their guy when it comes to passing situations, and I think they're going to let him run a little more in this game as well. So I don't hate Adrian Peterson in this game, but if I'm going for upside here, I'm going to go with DeAndre Swift if I'm picking out of those options. So a lot of people are going to be saying Adrian Peterson. I'm fine with that. I like Peterson in this matchup, but my choice is going to be DeAndre Swift, and I'm curious to see how this plays out because even if they give Swift like 5-10 carries, he could take that for 50, 60 yards, maybe get a score. And then on top of that, whatever he gets through the air, I mean, he's had this knack of catching touchdowns that have been saving his week-to-week value. So I think this is a potential good game for Swift. Kerryon Johnson is just kind of out of the picture at this point. As far as wide receivers, Kenny Galladay, he's a must-start. He's fully healthy now. He's got to be. It's been a couple weeks. Marvin Jones has just not done anything to merit a start, so I'm not starting Marvin Jones. TJ Hawkinson has quietly been pretty consistent. There aren't too many options at tight end, so I think TJ Hawkinson's a good start this week. I'd start him over Hayden Hurst. And out of all the tight ends I've mentioned so far, I think TJ Hawkinson would be the guy I choose. So that's that. This is the potential cancellation game. We'll keep an eye on that. New England hosting Denver. Pretty, not crazy high, not crazy low total here at 45. Expecting just about 20 from each team. Well, I guess more so. More points from New England. Cam Newton is going to be back, and that's huge news for the Patriots. He's definitely a start. As far as these running backs for the Patriots, you got Damian Harris with Sony Michel on IR. Could he be worth a look? Maybe. Denver's run defense isn't anything scary, but Damian Harris is just going to be so one-dimensional. I mean, this guy could end up with what he did the last week he played. He can end up with 99 yards and get you under 10 points. Like, this is just the reality of being in a PPR league and the reality of having a guy who's not going to be involved in the passing game. So Damian Harris could be worth it. He's going to need a touchdown if he wants dependence. And my only concern about him getting a touchdown was, let's say if they're at the 1 yard line, what are the Patriots going to do? Give it to their second year, third round pick? Or give it to Cam Newton, who's done it like 5 times already this year. So if they get close to the goal line, it's going to be Cam. So if you have Damian Harris, you need him to get over 100 yards, and you need him to score a touchdown when he's not on the goal line. So I don't know. I'm not buying into Damian Harris this week. I'm just not sold on it. James White, Rex Burkhead, I don't know. Too close to call. And it's going to be a game script where the Patriots are going to be ahead. And for that reason, I'm not too huge on Julian Edelman or N'Keal Harry either. I think they're both startable. Both startable and both flex consideration. I think Julian Edelman might be more wide receiver 2 flex, wide receiver 2 consideration. But we saw what happened in the Raiders game. I mean, they just got up so much to where they just ran out the clock with Sony Michel. And if you're a Damian Harris owner, that's what you're hoping for. You're hoping for that game Sony had against the Raiders. So, although that's not impossible, I don't want to bank on it. Not a huge fan of Edelman or Harry, as I said. As for Denver, Drew Lock is back. He's apparently healthy. He's got no injury designation going into this game. Melvin Gordon DUI during the week. Just take an Uber. I mean, how much? What do you sign an $8 million contract? You can't afford an Uber. You can't afford a Lyft. Don't they have an NFL like ride share? I don't know. Either way, Melvin Gordon doing stupid stuff. He got pulled over for speeding under the influence. Either way, he's going to be out this week. So Philip Lindsay is going to be the starter. And for that reason, I know a lot of people are going to be jumping on Lindsay in this matchup. But it's a terrible matchup. I mean, it's a bad game script. You're going against a good run defense. It just doesn't make sense. So think of it last year. If this was last year and Melvin Gordon wasn't even a thing for this team, like if it was Denver versus New England, you wouldn't be like, oh, I'm so excited to start Philip Lindsay this week. So I'm not buying into Philip Lindsay even with Gordon out. I think on DraftKings he's like 4,200, which at that price in DFS is definitely worth it because I mean he's a starting running back. A starting running back for under $4,500 is pretty damn good. So in that aspect, I would start him, but unless you're desperate, I wouldn't really consider him. Wide receiver wise, Tim Patrick, who has been killing it with Brett Rippon. Unfortunately, he's not going to have Brett Rippon this week. And because of that, and because of the fact that Stephon Gilmore is practicing and will play in this game, I am sitting Tim Patrick this week. And I'm also... I'm sitting Tim Patrick, but Jerry Jeudy does have my interest. It's going to be a negative game script. As I mentioned, Tim Patrick will more than likely be covered by Stephon Gilmore. Jeudy seemed to be more of Locke's guy, not so much Brett Rippon's guy. And Noah Fant is apparently 50-50 on whether he will play this upcoming week. So, assuming this game happens, I think Jerry Jeudy could actually have a pretty decent game. I'm expecting 10-15 points. If he gets a touchdown, it could be over 20. But I do like Jerry Jeudy in this matchup, assuming the game happens. Noah Fant, if he is going to be playing, am I worried about re-injury? Yeah, I am. It seemed to be an ankle issue, and that's pretty easy to re-aggravate for a bigger guy. All he has to do is get knocked down, and someone falls in your ankle the wrong way, steps on you. I'm sure that I hate to imagine how often NFL players actually get stepped on and just kind of just keep moving through it. And I don't know, it's got to happen more than once a game. But point being, I am a little worried about Noah Fant in this game. If he's 50-50 and he does play, I might be a little cautious, but we'll see. Hopefully they sit him and just let him get healthy for the following week. But he's had a little bit of time to recover, so hopefully it's not too much of an issue. If he is playing, am I starting him? Yeah, if I don't have any other options, I'll throw him in. Tight end's very, very scarce these days. Let's try to speed this up. We got some teams on bye, but let's go to this game here. Philadelphia Eagles, that spread. Almost a 10-point spread. Wow. That's easily the highest spread I've seen. This is Jets in Miami here. Okay. But that's a pretty hefty spread right here, and it definitely makes sense. So, Baltimore, minus 9.5, 46-point total. Okay, so as far as these Eagles, I'm not starting Carson Wentz. I am starting Miles Sanders, just, because he's that workhorse. He's going to get that value week to week. It could be a touchdown, rushing touchdown. It could be racking up those catches, but Miles Sanders is an every week guy. Travis Fulgham, who over the last couple weeks has become the Philadelphia #1 guy. He has a great story. He's coming out of a small school. Apparently he's had to overcome a lot. It's great for him. I'm not starting him this week. He's going to go against Marcus Peters and or Marlon Humphrey. No Alshon Jeffrey, no Deshaun Jackson to take away coverage. So my interest in Travis Fulgham this week is very, 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 very small. Greg Ward playing out of the slot I think is more interesting if you want to start a Philadelphia wide receiver, if you're into that kind of thing. But yeah, so I'm not entirely interested in any of these wide receivers. Ward would be my choice if you're choosing. That sounds so awful. Greg Ward or Travis Fulgham. It's really come to that for the Eagles. As far as tight ends, look, Zach Ertz has been awful. I just don't understand what other possible way the Eagles could move the ball against the Baltimore Ravens. They don't have the safeties to cover the tight ends. It could be Marcus Peters on Zach Ertz. I don't know exactly how they're going to play against a guy like Zach Ertz. But I just don't see a possible way for them to move the ball against the Ravens unless it's Zach Ertz. Obviously, the game script is going to be in his favor. So, I don't know. I mean, he's been awful, but if you have him, you just got to keep putting him in there. Unless you have another good option. And who would that good option be? I don't know. There really isn't any. I'd start Ertz over TJ Hawkinson. I'd start him over Hayden Hurst. Start him over Noah Fant with the injury concerns. So, that's just where we are with Zach Ertz. If he can't do it this game, I don't know. Then it becomes really, really worrisome. By the way, keeping an eye out for Dallas Goedert on waivers. Zach Ertz has a chance to be traded. Not too happy with the Eagles and his lack of targets, so he could be traded in the future, which could lead to Dallas Goedert being a top 3 to 5 tight end. As for Baltimore, obviously love the defense. Gotta love that spread. Lamar, he's a start here. The Ravens running backs are just a complete mess at this point. Until the Ravens wake up and realize they have to give J.K. Dobbins the ball 15 times to make their offense that much better, then it's just not worth buying into any part of this Baltimore backfield. Wide receiver wise, it's a great matchup for Marquise Brown. He's against Darius Slay, who hasn't been great. So I'm definitely fine with starting Marquise Brown. Mark Andrews also has been on a pretty good roll, so he's definitely going to be started as well. I would start Mark Andrews over Zach Ertz, obviously. But yeah, and Baltimore defense is going to kill it this week as well, as you can see. A crapshoot of a game here. The Giants hosting the Washington. So, as for the Giants, Daniel Jones has not thrown a touchdown since week 1. Week 1. He has not thrown a touchdown since week 1. Does he do it this game? I thought he would do it last game, but he didn't. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not starting Daniel Jones until he actually throws a goddamn touchdown. Devontae Freeman, as I mentioned last week, he's becoming more and more involved with this offense, and we saw him actually put up points last week. So I'm definitely okay with starting Devontae Freeman. I think he's earned the right to be a weekly starter, weekly flex consideration in PPR leagues. Darius Slayton currently dealing with an injury. He is questionable for this week's matchup. We'll have to see if he suits up. If he does, then I think he's definitely startable. And if he doesn't, then Golden Tate becomes semi-interesting. But like I said, it's just not, a low point total. I'm expecting this to be a defensive game. And when I say defensive game, I just mean two terrible offenses making terrible mistakes. And remember, Daniel Jones is going to have Chase Young and the whole Washington defensive line running at his neck the whole entire game. So, yeah. I wouldn't count on him being able to get the ball to Slayton deep. If anything, the one guy I do like in this matchup, believe it or not, is Evan Ingram. So, I mentioned Darius Slayton dealing with an injury. The Giants last week were really trying to get into the screen game. They ended up using Evan Ingram as a runner, and he actually rushed for a touchdown, which I thought was pretty interesting. It really tells me they want to get him involved in the offense. He's been healthy this year, and I think playing in the slot, this is where Daniel Jones is going to have to look. He's not going to have the time to wait for Darius Slayton to get open down the field. It won't be hard to get open against this defense, but I think this is more of a game where Evan Ingram shows up, and Washington has been awful against tight ends as well. So I do like Evan Ingram in this matchup this week. Yeah, so hopefully they get him more involved. And I believe He also had a red zone target last week. I watched the game with the Washington, not the Washington, the Giants and the Cowboys, and I believe Ingram had a couple opportunities in the red zone. So that's good as well. Washington football team. Kyle Allen is healthy enough to start this week, apparently. So for DFS, I think Kyle Allen is like $5,000, which for a quarterback is dirt cheap, and he's going against the Giants. So it's not a bad bet. He had a rushing touchdown last week. So Kyle Allen isn't terrible if you're playing it cheap in DFS. Running back wise, I think this is a big game for Antonio Gibson. The Giants haven't been bad against the run, but I think this is just the perfect type of game script. And by that, I mean the only positive game script the Washington team will get for like the entire year. So, yeah, I think this is a good game for Antonio Gibson to really have, set his mark on this team and classify himself as the workhorse. He's been getting a ton of targets. We saw early on Kyle Allen went to Antonio Gibson a lot. So I like Antonio Gibson a lot this week. Wide receiver wise, Terry McLaurin, he's healthy. He does not carry an injury designation. It's not going to be a mess of Alex Smith and Kyle Allen trying to figure out how to throw the ball. So expecting a little more organized. He has a pretty tough matchup actually against James Bradbury, who's been pretty good this year. So regardless, Terry's good enough to beat any coverage, and I'm starting him against the Giants. Someone I do think could be flying under the radar is Logan Thomas. I mentioned this so many times, but he's still getting targeted a lot. I mean, I've got to look at the total targets, but I know he's top 5 in tight end targets through the first 5 games. So it's really just about if Kyle Allen can put together a couple drives. I think Logan Thomas could actually be okay. So on DFS, he keep mentioning DFS, but I know if you guys like this type of DFS talk, let me know and I can keep it going. But I think he's $3,300 in DraftKings. And that's, I mean, if you're playing it cheap for a guy who's getting targets against a really bad defense, that's not a bad option. Especially if Terry's going to be covered by James Bradbury. So don't hate Logan Thomas, but, he's still just a desperate option. Don't go crazy with that. As far as the defenses go, I really like the Washington defense. Like I said, I think they're going to force Daniel Jones into some turnovers. I mean, he's had a huge fumbling problem. They got a guy named Chase Young. So I think the Washington football team is going to get a couple sacks, a couple turnovers. It's going to be a good matchup for this defense. Giants defense also kind of a sleeper. They haven't been bad. They scored a touchdown last week, and the Washington offense is just as bad as the Giants. So we'll see. This game here, we got the Carolina Panthers hosting the Chicago Bears. A 1-point spread. That's pretty interesting. Two evenly matched teams, competitive game. 44.5 over under. I think they're gonna beat that. I think this is gonna be more of a high scoring game. Teddy's been pretty good. They got Robbie. They got DJ Moore. They got Mike Davis. Chicago, Nick Foles can throw 3 touchdowns if he needs to. Allen Robinson's been absolutely killing it. So for Carolina, it's definitely not as good of a matchup for Teddy. So I probably wouldn't consider him in DFS or, I wouldn't consider him really a streamer. Although he has been impressive. If he does good this week, then he could be an every week guy. But we'll see. Mike Davis, apparently Christian McCaffrey may not be back till week 8. So if you still have Mike Davis on your roster and you haven't traded him, then you have the option of just holding on to him for a couple weeks, And that's not give you free running back 1 numbers for another 2 weeks. If you guys want to take that, it could mean 2 more wins. I spent a lot of money on him in terms of fab in my big money league, and I've won 4 in a row because of it. So I'm gonna hold on to him. I'm gonna take the extra wins. But definitely great running back 1 start this week against Chicago. Regardless of the matchup, he's getting a ton of receptions. He's been great. Wide receivers, Robbie's an every week guy. He's been extremely consistent. He's defied all odds. Robbie is the guy, the wide receiver 1 in this offense. It's time to admit, Robbie is the wide receiver 1. I'm worried about DJ Moore in this matchup. I'm worried because last week was a great matchup and he had the same amount of targets as Curtis Samuel. So I'm not looking forward to starting DJ Moore in this matchup. If you have him, I might consider benching him depending on who else you have. Yeah, I'm just not interested in DJ Moore. As far as Chicago, Nick Foles, like I mentioned, it's not a bad matchup. I just, he hasn't been great, so I wouldn't really consider him a streamer. Running back wise, David Montgomery, he had I think it was 8 or 9 targets last week. So this is post Tariq Cohen. This is Tariq Cohen, torn ACL. This is a great matchup for David Montgomery to finally do something on the ground. He looked great. If you saw that game against Tampa, David Montgomery made guys miss. He may not be that elusive, but his ability to shed tackles is awesome. So I do really, really like David Montgomery in this week's matchup. He's going to be pretty chalk for DFS, but I don't care. He's still 5,800 is a great price on DraftKings. So he'll be in my lineups there. Wide receiver wise, Allen Robinson, great matchup for him. And even, a back and forth even game. Allen Robinson's been killing it with Nick Foles, and I think he has another chance at a 10-catch, 20-point game, which is what he's been having. So I do like Allen Robinson in this matchup. Darnell Mooney, Anthony Miller, I don't know what's going on there. I'm not too interested. Jimmy Graham, if you're hurting at tight end, I like Jimmy Graham this week. He's been pretty good, and he had a great one-handed catch last week on the Thursday night game. So I'm liking Jimmy Graham lately, so we'll see how that goes. We've got a couple more matchups here. We got Tennessee hosting Houston. 53-point total. I think they're going to beat this total as well. I think Houston's starting to get better and better. I'm surprised that the total is Tennessee is only -3.5, considering how Houston started. But I guess it is a divisional game, so that makes sense. But I think they're really going to beat this total. Ryan Tannehill, he's a top 10 quarterback. End of story. He is a top 10 quarterback. Great start this week. DraftKings, he's only 5,900. Great price. Running back wise, Derrick Henry, he's in a good spot. He only played 50 or so % of the snaps last week. But that's because they haven't played in 2 weeks. They haven't been able to practice at all leading up to the game. So they didn't want him to go out without practicing and hurt himself, which is completely understandable. So they limited him last game, but he's going to run a wreck on the Texans this week. And they're out without Benardrick McKinney, which is just another one of their front seven guys. So definitely doesn't hurt. Corey Davis still dealing with COVID, and he's going to be out this week as well. Adam Humphries is returning, and A.J. Brown is healthy. So I think A.J. Brown's a great start, as well as Jonnu Smith, who has been getting consistent targets from week to week, which is what we want to see. So I'm firing up Jonnu, I'm firing up A.J. Brown, I'm firing up Derrick Henry, and I'm firing up Ryan Tannehill. Isn't it crazy to think that Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown, and Jonnu Smith all have top, dare I say, 5 to 10 potential at each of their positions, which is absolutely nuts. It sounds crazy me saying Ryan Tannehill is top 5 potential, but I'm not saying he is top 5. I'm just saying he has that potential. It's there, and he's been killing it. So, I like all those guys this week. I really do. So, all those guys will be in my lineup. As far as Houston, I do like Deshaun Watson this week. David Johnson, he's still playing a ton of snaps. He hasn't been great. He's actually been not bad. He just hasn't really been getting targeted as much as we would hoped. So David Johnson's okay start this week. I'm not expecting anything crazy out of him. Brandon Cooks, Will Fuller, I think both these guys are starts. Brandon Cooks is coming off that big game. Titans secondary isn't anything great, so yeah, I'm expecting a decent game from Fuller. I'm expecting a decent game from Cooks. I like Fuller a little better, but don't hate either of them. And not really any Houston tight end I'm looking at. Darren Fells had that big game last week, but that was mainly because Jordan Akins, their supposed main guy, was out. So with him coming back, likely it's going to be another mess. Talking about messes, we have the New York Jets going against the Miami Dolphins. When's the last time you saw Miami as a 9.5 point favorite? I don't even know if that's the limit. But 47 point total. they're just expecting Miami to get like 30 points and the Jets get 17. I'm sorry, that was too generous. The Jets getting maybe 10 and the Dolphins putting up 40, or I don't know. Dolphins going to do good. Ryan Fitzpatrick, he's a great start. Who else we got? Myles Gaskin, sure. Devontae Parker, absolutely. Preston Williams, interesting. Boomer bust. And Mike Gesicki, also boomer bust. I'm having an internal debate whether I want to start Mike Gesicki or Noah Fant. I'll probably take it all the way up into game day. I'm almost hoping Fant is out so I don't have to make the decision and get burned. But I think Gesicki could be okay. I'm just worried about what happened with the 49ers, where the Dolphins were up so much that they just kind of ran the ball the rest of the game with Matt Breida and Myles Gaskin, and they didn't need to throw it at all. So just be aware of that. I mean, it's the Jets, so it's the Jets. I believe Sam Darnold is out this week, meaning it's the Joe Flacco show. No more Le'Veon Bell, so it's Frank Gore and Michael Pirine. Cool, don't care. Jameson Crowder, he's the only Jets player that I will consider throwing in my lineups, and that's because Jameson Crowder, get this, the wide receiver 1 in points per game. Wide receiver 1 in points per game. He's had, I think, over 100 yards in every game he's played, at least a touchdown, like 8, 9, 10 receptions. So, Jameson Crowder, very easy start this week if he's on your team. Negative game script is all the Jets know. So, starting Crowder, I don't care who's quarterback. And, that's it. That's all I really want to say about the Jets. The Miami defense on DraftKings is like 2,900, which is the cheapest defense I would start. So, and it's not a bad defense to start either. So I like the Miami defense. And I'm sorry, I want to make sure I don't put wrong information out there. I don't think it was the game against San Francisco, because I think that was last week when Ryan Fitzpatrick actually did have a big game. Where was that game where Dolphins just got totally up and then just did not... Okay, so last week against San Francisco, he did have a big game. Was it against Jacksonville? I think it was against Jacksonville, where they didn't really need... Yeah, he had 160 passing yards against Jacksonville because they just got up, and they didn't really need to pass it. So just be aware for a game like that. Look at it. Go back and look at the Jacksonville game and look at how that went out. And I think Mike Gesicki scored like 2 points. Devontae Parker got maybe 10. Preston Williams didn't really do much. But Gaskin was great. So that's that. We got this game here. There's no spread. They cannot make a choice. I think Green Bay should 100% have at least a +1 or +2 or something. But I guess Vegas just didn't really want to touch this game. And I don't blame them. Tom Brady's pissed. You got two bays going against each other. That's funny. You never put together Green Bay, Tampa Bay. She hates my jokes. I don't know if you heard that, but she just sighed so loudly. Okay. Tampa, who do I like? I like Brady. I think this is going to be this should easily be flexed to Sunday night. Who wants to watch Jared Goff go against Jimmy Garoppolo / CJ Beathard / Nick Mullins? I don't. I would much rather watch this game. This would be very entertaining. But either way, I like Brady. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I think they're going to beat this total. Ronald Jones, how do I feel about him? He's looked fantastic as a runner. Not so much as a pass catcher, but Leonard Fournette is expected to be back this game. So I think it makes Ronald Jones a lot more one-dimensional. But he's still startable in my book. You know, if Leonard Fournette comes to this game and he's playing most of the snaps and he's the main guy, then it's a huge red flag and Ronald Jones belongs on the bench. But as of right now, Ronald Jones just looked way too good last week. So, as a runner. So, Ronald Jones, I'm starting. Leonard Fournette, I'm sitting. Wide receiver-wise, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin at Tom Brady's disposal. I do like Godwin better. I think Mike Evans will end up getting a touchdown that will save his day, as usual. But Chris Godwin's going to be the guy to get most of the targets. So lowering my expectations for Mike Evans, and definitely starting both these wide receivers still. And with Chris Godwin back, my interest in Scotty Miller, Justin Watson, who's that wide receiver who had a good game? Tyler Johnson, Cameron Brate, Rob Gronkowski, that interest falls to zero. Although Brady does spread the ball, don't be surprised if one of those 5 guys, or 2 or 3 of them, catch a touchdown this week. As for Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers, great start for him. Aaron Jones, great start for him. Wide receivers, Devonta Adams is back with no injury designation. They made sure he was 100% healthy, which is great because last year I had Adams and they kept forcing him back, which kept screwing me over. But Adams is back. He's completely healthy. 100% starting him this week. He's got an $8,000 price on DraftKings this week. He's got a pretty tough matchup, but it's Devonta Adams. I think we have to start putting some respect on these wide receivers' names. I see a lot of people like, a lot of the fantasy community on Twitter was like, oh, Tyreek Hill is going against the Ravens. Should I sit him? Oh, he's going against this. Should I sit him? And Tyreek Hill has been fine every week. And I'm not expecting that to change for a guy like Devonta Adams. We have to start putting some respect on these wide receivers' names. I don't like people. Is there a true shutdown corner in the NFL right now? Like, I have yet to see a true shutdown corner in the NFL right now. I mean, Jalen Ramsey, he's good, but like, has he really completely shut anyone down this whole entire year? And if there's anyone you're not going to shut down, it's Devonta Adams. Start Devonta Adams. That's the end of my rant. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, no interest. Robert Tonyan, not a bad matchup. Pretty high point total. Could catch a touchdown. Just, you kind of need him to catch a touchdown. He's not going to get the targets he got last week, or the last week they played. But I think he's still going to be the main tight end. And he has a chance to be the number 2, number 3, probably more likely the number 3 target on this team. And in a high-scoring game, he might be worth a shot. So, definitely don't hate him. As for this game here, the San Francisco 49ers hosting the LA Rams. Jim Garoppolo, Nick Mullins, CJ Beathard. I still don't know if they've officially named a starter. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is getting another go, but I'm not completely sure. Either way, I like Raheem Mostert in this matchup. I don't like Jerick McKinnon. He's going to be complete boomer bust with Raheem Mostert back. Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, can't trust him. I mean, Deebo had this illness last week, and then when he got to the game, he's still recovering from his foot injury, still not playing a full complement of snaps. Maybe this is the week where he starts playing a full complement of snaps. But guess what? He gets Jalen Ramsey. So, and I just talked about putting respect on these wide receivers' names. Deebo hasn't earned that respect yet, and he's still coming off injury. So, for me, I'm not starting Deebo Samuel. I'm not looking to start Brandon Ayuk. George Kittle, as always, you're not sitting George Kittle no matter what. Unless you have Travis Kelce and George Kittle. You're not sitting George Kittle. But even if you have Kelce and Kittle, you could put one in your flex. Either way. The Rams, Jared Goff. I don't get pulled one way or the other. The 51-point total isn't bad. I'm just not too interested in Jared Goff. But you know what? This San Francisco secondary is pretty bad. I don't even know if Richard Sherman's playing yet. But even if he is, he's not the same player, and he'd be coming off injury even if he was. So Jared Goff isn't bad. As far as these Rams running backs go, Cam Akers, he's going to be completely healthy going into this year. Last week. Last week he was coming in off injury. This week he's going to be healthy. The very first week he got 14 carries. Darrell Henderson's been killing it. Malcolm Brown's been killing it. And they're kind of swapping on and off. San Francisco has been pretty sturdy against the run. So I'm going to sit Darrell Henderson this week. I know he had a big week last week, but that was thanks to 2 touchdowns. And I don't know if he's going to have that luxury this week. It could be Malcolm Brown. I would just classify Darrell Henderson as a boom or bust. And in this matchup, I lean a lot more towards bust. So he still does have that big game potential, but I'm just not all that interested. Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, I think it's going to be more of these 2 guys I'm looking at. I think Robert Woods is in line for a pretty decent game. Cooper Cup as well. So I like both those guys. Gerald Everett, Tyler Higbee, it's a mess. Everett's been actually more of the main guy lately. So if I'm picking one, it's Everett. But don't like either of them. So let's go on to this game here. We got Buffalo hosting Kansas City. Buffalo's got a 5-point spread coming off an embarrassing loss against Tennessee. Josh Allen still didn't look bad. The Titans just looked very, very good. So I'm not putting... I wouldn't be surprised to see Buffalo cover in this game. Kansas City just hasn't looked as good as we've hoped. They lost to the Raiders last week. So the NFL is weird right now. There's a very high total on this, and that's for a good reason. It's going to be a fantastic game for Josh Allen. Devin Singletary with Zach Moss coming back. Not a huge fan of him. So might be avoiding Devin Singletary in this matchup. Kansas City run defense has not been good, but at the same time, we saw Devin Singletary lose a lot of playing time to TJ Yeldon last week. So with Zach Moss being back, I don't know. I'm not too big of a fan. Stephon Diggs, huge game for him. John Brown, I'm very curious because if John Brown is not playing this week, which I really want to confirm this before I say it. Okay, he's healthy. So, yeah, John Brown practiced fully. So John Brown is a decent start. But Gabriel Davis is one of these guys who has really been coming on lately. And if Brown was out this week, then I would say without a doubt Gabriel Davis is someone you can start confidently this week. With Brown being back, I can't really say that. But if I'm making a DFS lineup, I got to look at the prices for these Monday games. But I do like I do like the idea of Gabriel Davis in a really high scoring game. He's been getting the targets, and I think with John Brown being gone, he could have established himself as the wide receiver too. But we just don't know this for a fact yet. I want to see how this game plays out. If Gabriel Davis goes off this game, then he could be a rest of the season wide receiver too. And John Brown could really become just, a depth piece, like a total boomer bust guy. But we'll see. John Brown's also very good. So, Kansas City, do I even have to go over? Patrick Mahomes are starting. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Le'Veon Bell is not... Okay, so that's the big news. Le'Veon Bell on the Chiefs. Le'Veon Bell is not playing this week. He has to go through, I think it's 6 straight COVID tests in 6 straight days, all testing negative. Then he has to come in and take a point of care test. Then he has to learn the offense. Then he has to be integrated into the offense. So it might be one, probably 2. I'd say you have 2 more weeks of Clyde Edwards-Helaire being the guy in this backfield, and this is one of the weeks. So start Clyde this week. Tyreek Hill starting against Trey White. Who cares? Start Tyreek Hill. Travis Kelce, great start for Travis Kelce. Sammy Watkins is going to be out for a little bit. Makes a guy like Mecole Hardman or Demarcus Robinson interesting. I'd lean more towards Mecole Hardman, who's been actually pretty decent over the last couple weeks. Could be a boom or bust game. Could be a boom game for him, but I'm not going to put my bets on that. As far as Arizona and Dallas, another very high over-under here, 55 with Andy Dalton. Is a decent start for Andy Dalton. A Monday night game. He seems to gravitate towards CD Lamb. We'll have to see. We need more. We need more out of Andy Dalton to see where he really wants to go with the ball. But Andy Dalton is not a bad streamer if you're really in a tight spot this week. Ezekiel Elliott, I think, is everybody's consensus number 1 running back this week. CD Lamb, I'd start. Amari Cooper, I'd start. I'm not looking to start Michael Gallup. And Dalton Schultz, he's out of the picture for me now. Arizona, Kyler is my number 1 quarterback this week as well. Dallas' secondary has been awful. And Kyler's been pretty hit or miss lately. In prime time, I think Kyler's going to do good. Can you start Kenyon Drake? In this matchup, I think you can. Dallas has been really bad against the run. I know Chase Edmonds is starting to close that gap, but I really do believe Kenyon Drake can be okay in this game. I think he can get you over 10. I think he can manage that. So obviously, if you have another good option, you can start him over Drake, but I don't hate Kenyon Drake in this game. Chase Edmonds, if you're in a PPR league or if you're in a league where you get points for kick return, punt return yards, I'm in actually a couple of those. I'm in a league where I'm starting both Kenyon Drake and Chase Edmonds. This is tough times when it comes to COVID, when it comes to people being out, when it comes to bye weeks. So I'm in a tough spot, but I'm starting Kenyon Drake and Chase Edmonds in one league. Drake is my running back 2 and Edmonds in my flex. So not opposed to starting Edmonds as well. Wide receiver wise, DeAndre Hopkins gonna kill it. Christian Kirk coming off a good week, worth a flex, but it could easily just not be Christian Kirk as well. So we'll see. It could be Kyler Murray running in 3 touchdowns. So you never know. I'm not really interested in any of these Cardinals tight ends or anything like that. And yeah, that's gonna do it. So appreciate you guys listening. If you guys like it in this format, we can definitely do this in the future. I do like this a lot better. I do like seeing the point totals and the spreads and everything. And yeah, so appreciate you guys. Nana, do you want to say goodbye? Okay, she's sleeping. And that's what happens when I have a live audience. I put them to sleep. So, either way. Appreciate you guys, and I'll see you next week for week 7.